the Heat pulled out what turned out to be a nail biter at the end. With the way Jamal Murray was going, I thought he was going to tie the game, but the Heat were able to pull out the 111-108 victory over the Denver Nuggets on the road in what was probably the type of fourth quarter where it's just everything is going perfect. It was an immaculate fourth quarter for the Heat. They had 36 points, I believe, in the fourth quarter, and they made more field goals or at one point they were making more field goals than the amount of field goals the Nuggets were actually attempting. But early in the game, you can kind of tell that Denver's defensive intensity that's been there for a lot of these playoffs just wasn't there. Michael Porter Jr. and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had a few miscommunications, blown coverages that led to 3 wide-open Max Strus threes in the first quarter. And you can kind of tell from that first quarter that was going to be the defensive tone for the Nuggets. Now, they played good for stretches, but KCP had 3 shooting fouls, 2 of them on three-point shooters. Michael Porter Jr. kept losing Max Strus. There was one play where Michael Porter Jr. was losing shooters all night, was not his best defensive game with all the improvements he's made as an off-ball defender and a weak side rim protector. It just wasn't a good showing for the Nuggets perimeter defenders, with the exception of Bruce Brown and Christian Braun, who changed the game really in the first half. The Heat came out like, the sports cliches people throw out there when a team is down 0-1. The Heat came out like the desperate team. They turned the game into a bar fight, and for the first 8 minutes of that first quarter, it looked like the Nuggets weren't ready for that type of defensive intensity, and they corrected it. As the game went on, I didn't expect them to be shook by the physicality and the uppage in physicality all game, but they did rebound a little bit. But Christian Braun, when he came in, he hit a fadeaway jumper over Bam Adebayo. Well, before that, he made a tough layup towards the end of the first quarter, but Christian Braun had a few steals. It seemed like I saw a tweet from Dan Devine, a writer at Yahoo Sports. He tweeted that it looked like Christian Braun had direct orders to never let Duncan Robinson touch a basketball, and Christian Braun got a few steals, started some fast breaks, had a nice cut in transition where Jamal Murray found him, and Christian Braun legitimately changed the game. The Nuggets bench was playing really well with Jokic off the floor and kind of blitzed Miami's bench unit to open the second. And we were wondering when the Heat were going to go with Kevin Love. I kind of wondered why Kevin Love didn't play in the last game, but inserting Kevin Love into the starting lineup not only gives the Heat extra spacing and some size, but as Jeff Van Gundy mentioned on the broadcast, it kind of realigned the Heat's defensive assignments to where Butler was now guarding Jamal Murray for most of the game and not roaming off of Aaron Gordon last game and having, Gabe Vincent guarding Jamal Murray while Caleb Martin was placed on KCP, or vice versa. They kind of switched those matchups a little bit last game. You put Kevin Love in the starting lineup, he kind of has a natural fit defending Aaron Gordon, who the Heat are glad, to ignore and let Aaron Gordon take all the shots he needs, because they're just going to leave him wide open. And Kevin Love can provide spacing and rebounding on the other end of the floor, for his slow-footedness and his old age at this point in his career defensively. So I liked that move by Eric Spoelstra. I think Kevin Love was I'm looking at the score box here, just doing it off the fly. Kevin Love was 2 for 9, was 2 for 6 from 3, but he was a plus 18. He had 10 rebounds, had some nice outlet passes, had an outlet pass to Bam Adebayo where Jokic fouled him and it was a clear path foul, and that kind of was changing the tide of the game in the third quarter a little bit. Kevin Love was, essential, and the Heat going back to Kevin, this was the series where I mentioned in my preview video, and I'm sure a lot of other people doing NBA content pointed this out, but this was a series where the Miami Heat were probably going to insert Kevin Love back into the starting lineup or start giving him real minutes again, because he just has a natural spot to fit Aaron Gordon, and quite frankly, I don't know if the Nuggets, I don't think they're doing a tweak or anything to their starting lineup, but I don't know what moves they can do to kind of force the Heat to go back to their smaller lineups or starting their smaller lineups, because I think the Heat found something here with going back to Kevin Love. Now, it helps when you shoot damn near 50% from three, so the Heat were shooting the leather off the ball, but again, they were all good shots. You know, Max Strus did hit some tough shots. Duncan Robinson had his own personal 8-2 run to start the fourth quarter, and I remember the camera panned to a fan in the stands, a Heat fan, who just had his mouth wide open agape, wondering how the hell Duncan Robinson was on this heater, because in that third quarter, Jokic was spectacular. It kind of, if you were somebody that is of the thought, you know, you let Jokic just score in single coverage and limit everyone around him, the Nuggets managed to increase their lead going into the fourth quarter, building off of their halftime lead with Jokic scoring 18 points. So those people who believe that single covering Jokic was the answer, their take wasn't looking too good. But then the Heat's bench, as bad as they played in the second half, they rebounded. Duncan Robinson was awesome. And Duncan Robinson's dribble drive game, Jeff Van Gundy pointed this out, but anybody who has been watching the Heat these playoffs, they've noticed that ever since Duncan Robinson came back into the rotation, his dribble drive game has been surprisingly really good. Pick and rolls with Bam Adebayo, making reads, throwing lobs off the bounce, taking Jamal Murray off the dribble. This was not like I said, this was not a good defensive night for the Nuggets on the perimeter. They had terrible closeouts. They lost shooters. Whenever they did close out on shooters, they bit on the pump fake, and the Heat players just attacked closeouts. And Duncan Robinson did that once to Jamal Murray, got an and one to start the fourth quarter after he just hit a three. Bam Adebayo hit Duncan Robinson on a backdoor cut where he finished a tough layup over Jeff Green, and we got Duncan Robinson flexing in an NBA Finals game. But that was the type of quarter he was having. He can flex all he wants because he was the one that sparked a Heat run to start the fourth, because the Heat were down 8. Jokic was scoring, and it looked like the Nuggets, you know, kind of rebounded from the first quarter after the Heat kind of put the game in the mud, so to speak. But some other keys in that fourth quarter, Bam Adebayo was awesome all game. Defensively, making it tough on Jokic, even though Jokic had his. He was good on switches. He was good with ball movement as an offensive hub. His dribble handoff game with Duncan Robinson was crucial in the fourth quarter. And finishing in the pick and roll, as, you know, the Heat started running a lot more pick and roll, especially with Kyle Lowry, you know, late in the fourth quarter. But this was a good all-around showing for the Heat. The Cody Zeller minutes were terrible. Jokic took him to the woodshed. Jokic finished with 41 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists. He was a minus 11. The Nuggets starters really did not come out to play to start the game. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, he had, once again, for as good of a defender as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is, especially, you know, off the ball, chasing people off screens, there are just some games where he just has the dumbest fouls and the dumbest defensive decisions you can see from a player, and this game was chock full of them. Christian Braun, the magic kind of wore off in the fourth quarter. There was one particular play where he just helped way too far off of Gabe Vincent, and the Heat swung it to the opposite side, and Gabe Vincent hit a 3, and it was something live that you could see coming from a mile away. Just wasn't as airtight of a game for Denver as usual. And I mean, I guess they had to not play well at some point, because the Nuggets won 7 straight playoff games, which, you know, that is fucking insane to do considering the level of competition and the level of intensity and how much different playoff games are. To win 7 in a row, that's incredible. But I still feel pretty good about my Nuggets in 5 prediction. Obviously, it's going to be tough to win back-to-back games on the road over the Heat, and I want to keep, you know, emphasizing I respect the Heat, but I just think the Nuggets, are a better team. And there were just stretches of this game where they figured it out and they looked good. And, you know, they just had a 3-pointer. Again, they made a run down the stretch after the Heat were up, I believe it was 13 with about 3.5 minutes to go, and the Nuggets still made their run. That's the thing. With their shot making and the way they run their offense, the Nuggets are always in a game. And that's still my core belief as to why I picked Nuggets in 5, because of Jokic, because of Murray. Michael Porter Jr. is probably going to play better, but we got a series now.